I once believed that trust was the solid foundation every marriage stood upon, until my wife taught me that even trust could be turned into a weapon. It all began one quiet evening after dinner. We were sitting on the couch, phones in hand, lost in our own worlds. Out of nowhere, she chuckled at something on her screen and said, "You know, I think it's perfectly fine for people in relationships to have friends of the opposite gender." I glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. "You mean like a guy best friend?" She smiled casually. "Yeah, you've met Jason. We've been friends since college." Jason, the guy who always found excuses to text her late at night. The one she insisted was like a brother. I never liked him, but I trusted her. We'd been married 5 years, and she'd never given me a reason to doubt her. So I smiled and said, "Of course, I trust you." But that conversation planted a seed I couldn't ignore. The more I thought about it, the more I noticed subtle shifts. Her whole demeanor changed whenever his name came up. She'd light up instantly, her laughter softer, warmer, and she replied to his texts faster than mine. Still, I stayed silent. I didn't want to sound like the insecure husband who polices friendships. A week later, she mentioned she was meeting Jason for lunch. "Don't wait up," she said as she grabbed her purse. "We might hang out for a bit after." That night, when she returned home, she smelled faintly of cologne, one that wasn't mine. I didn't question it. I just made a mental note of the tiny crack forming in the glass of our marriage. Then one night, as we lay in bed, she said playfully, "You should get out more. Make some friends. You're always home working." Her tone was light, but something about it stung. So I asked, "Would you be okay if I had a female best friend?" She laughed as if I'd told a joke. "Of course! Why wouldn't I be?" I smiled, nodded, and tucked that answer away. Because in that moment, I decided something. If she could have a male best friend, then I could have a female one. A week later, I met Emily. She was a graphic designer working with me on a freelance project, funny, sharp, and refreshingly easy to talk to. It was strictly platonic, but I knew exactly what I was doing. I started mentioning her name a little too often. I laughed harder at her jokes. I texted her while sitting beside my wife, just like she used to do with Jason. At first, my wife didn't seem to care. "That's nice," she said. "I'm glad you've made a friend." But soon things shifted. She noticed I started dressing a bit better before meeting Emily for coffee. She noticed my phone lighting up with her messages. Her tone sharpened when she asked, "Emily again?" "Yeah," I replied casually. "She's just easy to talk to." That line hit harder than I expected. A few days later, my wife grew distant. No late-night smiles at her phone. No mentions of Jason. It was quiet. Too quiet. Then one evening, I told her Emily had invited me to a small art show downtown. "You should come," I offered. She shook her head. "You two have fun." She tried to sound indifferent, but I heard the small crack in her voice. That night, Emily and I took a photo together at the event. Nothing romantic, just two friends smiling. I posted it on my Instagram story without thinking twice. When I returned home, my wife was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, staring at the screen. "Did you have fun?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said. "It was great." She nodded slowly, eyes lingering on me. "She's pretty," she murmured. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That night, she didn't reach for me in bed, and for the first time, I didn't reach for her either. The distance between us thickened like a storm cloud we both pretended not to see. Conversations became careful, mechanical, safe, but empty. A week later, I caught her scrolling through Emily's Instagram. She hadn't noticed me behind her. She zoomed in on a photo of Emily and me laughing over coffee. "She seems really into you," my wife finally said, breaking the silence. I shrugged. "She's just a friend." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, I used to say that too." And that line hit me harder than I ever imagined. I turned to face her, searching her eyes. "So," I said quietly, "what happened to 'it's perfectly fine to have a male best friend'?" She looked away, clutching her phone so tightly her knuckles went pale. "It is fine," she said softly. "But this feels different." "Different how?" I asked, my voice steady but my chest tight. "I don't know," she murmured, her voice trembling. "It's the way you talk about her." It sounds like she means more to you than I do. I wanted to say that's exactly how I felt every time you mentioned Jason, but I held it back. Instead, I just nodded and said quietly, "Maybe now you understand what that felt like." She froze. The only sound in the room was the faint whir of the ceiling fan above us. "You did this on purpose?" she asked after a long pause. I didn't deny it. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. All I did was hold up a mirror. Tears welled in her eyes, not out of anger, but from realization. She sank down onto the couch, her voice barely above a whisper. Was I really that blind? I sat beside her and sighed. "I don't think you meant to hurt me." "But you did. Every time you laughed at his jokes, every late-night text, every secret lunch, it made me feel small. Like I could be replaced." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, her tone softer now. "I guess I never realized how that looked from your side." "I know," I said gently. "That's why I needed you to feel it." She studied me for a long moment, then whispered, "Do you like her?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about it, really thought about it, before answering. "No," I said honestly, "but I like how she listens, how she makes me feel seen." My wife's gaze fell to the floor, guilt spreading across her face like a shadow creeping across a wall. "That used to be me," she said quietly. "Yeah," I replied. "You were." We sat there in silence, two people realizing how far apart they'd drifted without ever meaning to. The next morning, she surprised me. She made breakfast, something she hadn't done in months. As I sat down, she spoke without looking up. "I texted Jason last night." My brow arched. "Oh?" "I told him we shouldn't hang out anymore," she said, her voice soft but certain. "It's not fair, to you or to us." Her words hit me deeper than I expected. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "I did," she replied firmly. "Because you were right. I wasn't cheating, but I was crossing lines I shouldn't have. And I hate that it took all this for me to realize it." I nodded slowly, a strange mix of sadness and relief washing over me. "And Emily?" she asked, smiling faintly. "You don't have to stop being friends with her," she continued before I could answer. "I just need you to remember that I want to be your favorite person again." That line broke something inside me. Because beneath all the lessons, the jealousy, and the pride, that's what we both wanted, to be seen, to be chosen, to be enough. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. We started spending time together again. No phones, no distractions. Just us, we talked. We laughed. Slowly, the wall between us started to crumble. Emily and I still kept in touch, but it wasn't the same anymore. One day she even told me, "I think you and your wife are good for each other. Don't mess that up." And I didn't. Months later, my wife and I were out for dinner when she smiled across the table and said, "You know, that whole thing with Emily and Jason, it actually saved us." I chuckled. "How do you figure?" "Because," she said, "for the first time, we stopped pretending that trust means never feeling jealous. It means choosing each other, even when it's uncomfortable." I raised my glass toward her. "To lessons learned." She clinked her glass against mine and whispered, "To second chances." That night, as I watched her laugh across the table, something simple yet profound hit me. Love isn't about proving a point. It's about remembering why you started. And for us, that reminder came from one simple sentence she once said, "It's okay to have a male best friend." Turns out, it really was okay, as long as we never forgot to be each other's best friend first.